Okay, so today we're doing front CV axles on this 99 Toyota Avalon. It's a pretty straightforward job. If you know what you're doing, you can do it in 20-30 minutes. If you don't know what you're doing, it might take you a bit longer. This is going to be pretty much the exact same for obviously this, the Avalon, or Camry, Corolla, Celica, any front wheel drive Toyota from, I don't know, at least the mid 90s, like up till present. Oh, also Highlander and RAV4. So pretty much every Toyota that's not a truck. It's easy, like I said. The only difference might be the fastener sizes for some of the bigger ones. So, first of all, it's a 21 millimeter for the lug nuts. With the exception of the Sequoia and the Tundra, every Toyota is going to be a 21 millimeter for the lug nuts. Okay, we have to take off this cotter pin. On a lot of them, most of the Toyotas, it's actually not going to have a cotter pin like this. It's just going to have a 12-pointed nut that's staked down. So be aware, you will need a 12-point socket for pretty much every Toyota. This is like the one exception. And all the small front wheel drive ones, it's either going to be a 30 millimeter or 32 millimeter. This one happens to be 30 millimeter for the axle nut. Okay, off. I want to make sure this axle is moving in the hub, not stuck. I'm going to get it free first. Just give it some love taps. Go. Nice and free. We're going to take off this bolt, which is for the brake hose and this wheel speed sensor. We also have to take off this little plastic clip for the wheel speed sensor. So don't break the wire. 12 millimeter bolt comes off. The strut to knuckle bolts are going to be 22 millimeter. None of this stuff is really going to be rusted or anything because I actually worked on this car about 6 months ago. I just took this shit apart. You see it's got some new struts. I put those struts on and I also replaced the lower control arms. Per customer request, and when I was doing that, I noticed that his CV boot was torn on, because it was on the driver's side. I forgot. I was thinking it was the passenger side, but it was on the driver's side, but he requested that I replace both sides. So that's what we're doing. Okay, anyway, so 22 millimeter nut. 1, 2, to get these guys out, what I usually like to do is just take a hammer and a punch them out, and then just be kind of careful that this whole thing doesn't fall forward, because I'm not totally sure if it's going to stretch the brake hose. You don't want to damage the brake hose on accident, so just do it slowly. If you see that it's stretching the brake hose, then we can always unbolt the brake caliper. So we go get a hammer and punch. smaller hammer that is. This is the box that the CV axle came in. It's a GSP. I use a lot of their CV axles. I don't know, never really have any issues with them. And they're usually pretty reasonably priced. I think these ones were about $70 on Amazon. So I like to recommend them. It's a decent aftermarket axle. This might be kind of tricky to film because you kind of need both hands, but see if I can show you this. Well, here's what happens when I punched out the upper bolt. Then the whole thing wants to go like that, so I actually put the punch in place of the upper bolt, so now I can punch out the lower bolt, keep everything from falling forward. Okay. Now we're gonna slowly separate that so they don't damage anything. Pry bar. Get this sucker out. And it looks like we're going to be fine not removing the brake caliper. Sometimes, depending on the car, you have to remove both the brake caliper, or you might also have to remove the outer tie rod from the knuckle. You just kind of have to do it by feel. Also, this joint just came apart because I pulled it too far, so if you plan on reusing the joint, don't let that happen. But it doesn't matter because we're replacing it. Take this out. Oh, wow. That was lucky. See, I couldn't get enough clearance to get the CV axle out because I made the joint fall apart. I was lucky. I was able to get the joint back together. that will ruin your day if you have to take that fucking boot apart and fix it. I mean, it won't really ruin your day, but it'll suck. You don't want to do it. So now, we get a light. By the way, at this point, I'm 12 minutes into the job, so that should give you an idea of how long this takes, even doing it one-hand filming. So there is a snap ring. Can you see it? Alright, see those little two ears poking out like in the center of the screen? That's a snap ring, and you have to take it out with some needle nose pliers because it's actually holding the axle in the bracket right now. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this and film at the same time. And if you have some long needle nose pliers, that would make this easier. I kind of forgot that I had to do this when I was grabbing my tools from work. So I didn't think to grab my long needle nose. Fuck, I do have some long needle nose, so let me go get them. Because these are bent tip, so they might not. See if I can put you guys in. Get you a front row seat. Use both hands. Try not to bump the camera. Boom. Alright, got that out. And now there's also a bolt holding this in as well. I think the bolt is actually holding the outer race. Well, you'll see when I take it apart. See that bolt? That's that one in the center? That's a 14 millimeter. So we have to take that out, and then the whole axle will come out. This is when, if you have a swivel socket, it can make your life a lot easier. It's just a short little bolt. So now this whole axle should just come out as long as it's not stuck. Let me just pull this out now. Of course not. Why would it be that simple? Oh, there we go. Just put our little pry bar in there and pry against the bracket. It's coming. It's coming. Boom. Check that you don't have a bunch of ATF coming out now, because in some cars, once you pull out the axle, you'll get a bunch of ATF out of the transmission, but it doesn't look like, that's all just water on the ground from the AC, so it doesn't look like that any training fluid is coming out. Boom. So there's your axle. Let me show you something about this. Here's that snap ring that we were kind of fighting for a second. And you know, most axles actually have a circlip in here. When you push them into the tranny, it clicks into place. But just on the Toyota, some of their passenger side axles, this is how they keep them in. And there's a center bearing here. So that bolt that we took out, this bearing sits in a bracket, and I guess the bolt actually just holds the outer race in place. And this clips the thing in. And that's it. That's what holds it in. So you gotta take off the snap ring, because the new one doesn't come with it. Always compare your replacement. It looks pretty good to me. This joint is fucked up. I fucked it. Oh, there it goes. So, yeah. Make sure when you compress them, they're the same length. Make sure this is the same. This guy, this is a dust shield. It got damaged in shipping. Sometimes people will see this guy gets bent and they'll freak out, but it's actually not a big deal. It's superficial damage. Because it's just a little piece of sheet metal, basically. Just trying to find something to bend it back into shape with. There's a little dust shield. I mean, it's not beautiful, but It's just as long as this doesn't actually hit your axle seal, you'll be good. So, I like to lube these guys just a tiny bit. It makes me feel better. Put a tiny bit of Dex ATF on the splines, so it'll slide right in, nice and slick. Gotta lube up your shaft. Now I got training fluid on my fingers. Whoops. Dude. I almost forgot the snap ring, guys. How do you want me to do that? There's what it looks like sliding it into the tranny. Be careful not to fuck up that seal. I have a feeling that getting this back in place is going to be the most frustrating part of this whole process. And doing it, filming it at the same time, of course, is going to be even worse. But it's okay. Get this guy oriented. Alright, I got that snap ring back in place, and I got the little bolt back in the bracket. Yeah, that was really annoying. Like I said, that was the most frustrating part of this job. And if you have some long reach needle nose pliers, like some 11-inch ones or something, it makes it a lot easier. So I would buy yourself a pair. Like, not these guys, but these guys, only with a straight tip. These guys have a bent tip. It's gonna make this job go a lot easier. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's all downhill from here. It's not that hard, but it requires some physical exertion in both hands. So what I did is lift the knuckle up, get it started going through the slot from the strut, line the bottom holes up, put the punch in, then with the punch in place, you get the top bolt started. Whoops. Now take the punch back out and put the bottom bolt in. There it goes. For God's sake, whatever you do not let that inner joint come apart. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, let me explain it to you a little bit. old one. Okay, the outer joint, you can't move it in and out, right? You can only move it like that. The inner joint is called a plunge joint. So it can move in and out like that. Compensate by changing the axle length when the vehicle goes up and down. Right, because this part is going up and down relative to this part, which is just at the height of the wheel. So, if you pull this out too far, this joint, there's nothing actually holding it in here. It'll just... See, I just pulled it right out. No, you can't, it won't go back in. Unless you fuck with it and you're lucky. Now I got it going back in, right? But you can't always, you won't always get lucky enough to get it back in. So just don't fucking let it come apart. I hope you understood that. Anyway, yeah. All that's left now is tightening up some nuts. These nuts. Wow, you really not want to cooperate right now. It's okay. It's all good. Just get that. You going in there? Alright, got that guy started. Got my nuts in my hand. Sorry, it's getting fucking dark already. Yeah, you do need these nuts to be pretty tight, so. Alright, there's that. A little clip. The wheel speed sensor. Clip them back into place. And then our bracket for the also the wheel speed sensor. The brake hose. That, I mean, get that in. Alright, now we have it all bolted back together. It's really important to torque the axle nut because that actually preloads the wheel bearing. So if you over or under torque it, then the bearing will wear prematurely. And now if you're doing this on the ground, probably the easiest way to do it is just have your buddy jump in the car and apply the brake so this wheel doesn't turn while you torque the nut. If you're doing it by yourself, what I always do is just take a big pry bar and wedge it between the studs and brace it against the ground. So now when we turn and torque the nut, we won't cause the wheel to rotate, because the thing is, if we just let it rotate, right now, if I didn't have the pry bar in place and I just try to torque this, all that torque is going against the parking pawl in the transmission. Obviously you don't want to break that, so it's better to do this. And I believe the torque on this is 217 foot-pounds, because that's the torque for like every Toyota wheel bearing. So this torque range goes to 200. It's gonna be close enough. We'll go 200 and then a little bit past it. Well, it's a little bit past 200. I'm good with that. Now we just need a cotter pin to go in there. You're not really supposed to reuse cotter pins, but whatever. So much trouble with this. Okay, there we go. Wedge the cotter pin in. Guess if they really didn't want you to reuse it, they would give you a new one, wouldn't they? So fuck them. Yeah. Sorry that my cameramanship is so terrible right now. Just a guy trying to make a buck with one hand. Let's try and do this. Oh, there we go. All right. Now we got that guy in there. All right. There you go. Wheel back on. I hope there's enough light that you can see. I mean, if you've gotten this far, I assume you know how to put a wheel back on anyway. But I will say, please torque the lug nuts. You don't want your wheel coming off. And the torque spec on these is 76. Every Toyota passenger car, the lug nuts 76. If it's a truck with the 21mm lug nuts, then it's 83. If it's a truck with alloy rims with the 22mm lug nuts, it's 100. And if it's a truck with steel rims and the 22mm lug nuts, then I think it's actually like 150 or something, but you should check before you torque those to 150. Alright, well there you have it. It's your passenger side CV axle on a 99 Toyota Avalon. Pretty much any other, I won't show you the license plate, any other Toyota passenger car. So I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Yeah, thanks for watching.